Elle est très, très heureuse d'être avec nous ce matin. C'est une coach facilitatrice. Elle va fortement vous inspirer parce que c'est une enseignante de premier plan de l'agilité partout à travers le monde. C'est l'auteur de plusieurs livres à succès, dont celui que vous connaissez sûrement, qui est une référence dans l'industrie, qui se nomme Coaching Agile Teams. Dans sa keynote, elle va nous guider vers une compréhension plus approfondie des courants de changement dans le monde du travail moderne et nous aider à explorer l'avant-garde de ce changement que nous pourrions vivre dans les prochaines années. Nous sommes très, très, très chanceux de l'avoir avec nous ce matin parce que c'est une sommité de l'agilité et vous allez le découvrir par vous-même lors de cette keynote qui commence maintenant. Sans plus attendre, je vous demande de faire un maximum de bruit. Please make some noise pour Lisa Atkins. Let's go!
Thank you. Good morning. How are you? You want to be a little bit better? You want to feel a little bit better? All right, let's do something together that'll help you feel a little bit better. What you're going to do in a moment is you're going to clap your hands together and you're going to rub them like this. Go ahead. Build up some heat. Get it going nice and good. And here's what you get to do now. Put it anywhere on your body where you need a little more support, maybe an aching back or a neck. I'm going to put mine right here. There you go. There you go. So here's what we're up to today. And as I move into this keynote, I'm just aware, in the last few moments, standing over there, listening to the announcements, I'm aware of what a special privilege it is to be able to speak with you. And it's something I don't take lightly. So I hope that this is enlivening. I hope that it is eye-opening, perhaps. I hope it's relieving to you. What we're going to do in this keynote is that we're going to zoom way, way, way out, and then zoom in, and then way out again and back in. And if you're willing to take a little trip through your imagination with me, then toward the end, we will zoom out all the way into outer space. You willing to come along with me? It's going to be good. I mean, I think it's going to be good. It's going to be all in your head. I can imagine it's going to be great in your head when we do it. All right. So let's start with our first zoom out. And the reason why agility is so damn hard. It's that agility is merely a player in a much bigger thing going on in the world. And it is this idea that we're recovering from, this idea that we can take the industrial model and apply it to anything, even organizations that don't have anything to do with this sort of model. And we are now moving into the dawning realization that organizations in our knowledge work world are much more like ecosystems, like rainforests, complex adaptive systems. How many of you have already studied this? You know what I'm talking about. You've probably been thinking about this for a long time if you've been studying this. It's like, why do we continue to apply a model that doesn't apply? This is the thing that business in the world is waking up to right now, is that we have misapplied a model, the industrial model, which, by the way, has only been around for 150 years. How many years have human beings been around? A lot longer than that. So in some ways, what we're doing is we're coming home to what we already know works. We're coming home to the idea of thrivability and of life giving more life. And since organizations are made up of people, and this is what we do naturally, it only makes sense that we will come home to this idea. Now, In our current world, I would say, and you would probably agree with me, that things are pretty uncertain, pretty volatile. How many of you feel like there's no ground under your feet anymore, that things keep shifting? I know I do, and it's a very unsettling feeling. Part of the reason why this is happening is that we are in what they call the Great Acceleration, that everything is accelerating and that everything is changing. And if that's not bad enough, the nature of change itself has changed. I have borrowed these three ideas, these three dimensions of change, from a couple of researchers, and I really enjoy the way they think about it. Well, okay, let's be fair. I don't enjoy it. This scares the hell out of me, but at least it helps me see things more clearly. That change itself has changed, and here are the three aspects of change that are now true: perpetual, pervasive, and exponential. Perpetual, meaning it's no longer true that we do these big changes and then have a period of relative stability, and then another big change and a period of relative stability. I got to tell you, in the early part of my career, that was true. And I bet for most of you, you haven't experienced that in quite a while. I know I haven't. It's perpetual all the time, pervasive, occurring in many parts of your work, your life, your very being, all the time, everywhere. And the one that's most terrifying is exponential. You only have to look at how we reacted to the pandemic to know that human beings are not good at exponential. We're really good at linear. Exponential blows our minds, but more importantly, it blows our bodies. We're not wired for it yet. But guess what? You know what we do as human beings? We adapt. We are great at adapting. So here are the aspects of how change is changing. So think about it this way, is that we are all on the change bus together. It's going down the road, and there are no stops. None of us are getting off this change bus anytime soon. So we might as well get good at working with it. And this is my hope, to show you, to offer you some ideas about how Agilists actually have this emerging superpower that can be useful not only in business, but for the whole world. All right, how can we stop going faster when our ability to see further ahead is decreasing? The idea of keeping up is so 20th century. You are not going to be able to keep up with anything else anymore. Give away that strategy. So what we need to do is sit in the middle of the chaos and figure out the next wise step. This is another thing you actually know how to do, but you might not realize it yet. So let's talk about Agile for a moment. We're going to zoom in a little bit. Agility comes with its own lexicon, its own vocabulary, and it comes with all of these practices, so many practices. It is reasonable from a certain perspective to look at all those practices, any subset of those practices, and to say to yourself, oh, I get it. I get what Agile is. This is really simple. If you think that, you probably are not understanding that those practices are simply current known patterns for generating a set of values and a whole new mindset, a mindset that goes along with the idea of a rainforest being our natural environment for business. So when we get stuck in the practices, we might not know yet that we can come to the values and the mindset and the principles, and then ask ourselves the question, what's the practice that's going to support more of those? So there's a deep, deep structure to agility that actually is made for our current world. I wish someone had told me this early on, that Agile frameworks are intentionally incomplete. They're intentionally incomplete because if they were complete, they would not be fit for a world that's constantly changing. They are just enough, it's just enough scaffolding to hold us together while we figure out the best way to work without capitulating to our current systems that don't work. Lynn Twist, she's an amazing woman. She said this, and it keeps ringing in my mind. She says, the job of our age is to hospice the systems that no longer work and to midwife the systems of the future. Now, you might not think that's what you're doing, but it's what you're doing. Agile frameworks, on the other hand, are quite complete, and they've got your back for this one thing: metabolizing change. Again and again and again. So metabolizing, you know, like you eat food and your body gets energy from it, and you can move on to the next thing. You have a new, renewed vigor because that nutrition has gotten into your system. It's the same thing with agility and change. We can metabolize change as Agilists the same way we metabolize our food, and actually not be freaked out by change, but get a lot of energy from it. And maybe new things can even arise. I mean, that's what we're all about, right? We're not about doing the same stuff faster. You all know where that's getting us, don't you? We are about emerging the new thing based on what's happening right now. Here's why I think agility makes it safe to change. It makes it safe for us to bring in this perpetual, pervasive, exponential change. We never lose progress. We can adjust while it's cheap. We can amplify the good, and I think this is even more important. We can correct the bad because we're going to see it early. We can bring in change without freaking out, and of course, create something that's going to be closer to what people really need. So I want to be like super basic with you for the next 5 minutes or so. Like super basic. We're going down to Scrum 101 here. Because I want to show you exactly how agility supports you and makes it safe to metabolize constant change. So let's look at each one. First, just a quick thing about how I draw the Scrum framework. I draw it as two loops, or I guess one linear and one loop. So here's the linear, you know, moving out to a delivered value, whatever that is, and here's the loop, the sprint review and retrospective coming back into the backlog to make as closed loop a system as possible. Okay, so let's use this drawing 5 different times to show you the 5 ways that agility makes it safe to change. Here's the first one, never losing progress. Well, how in the world can we never lose progress? I work with leadership teams now, and they're like, oh my God, if things are changing all the time, Lisa, how will we ever get anything done? And I'm like, here's how you'll get things done. You're going to plan a very short period of time, less than 4 weeks, and you're going to say, here's the most important thing to actually create, and then your teams are going to create that because you're going to leave them alone. They're actually going to create it. So that is product or service or whatever you're building, that's in the bank. How about adjusting while it's cheap? Okay, well, if we use the sprint review and the retrospective and the daily stand-up as these feedback loops they're meant to be, and if those feedback loops are fairly frequent and on a regular cadence, then we are going to simply adjust while it's cheap, because we'll be getting the information in enough time to do so. The most important thing is that the results of the sprint review and retrospective come back into the backlog, and if indeed something is more important, it can move right into the next sprint. Okay, how about amplifying the good and correcting the bad? Okay, we have an actual piece of thing to look at the end of each sprint. And if we look at that thing and inspect it in the sprint review, we can say, how does it perform relative to how we thought we wanted it to go? And as we use that thing in successive sprints, as it's out there in the world, we should be gathering information about how it's going. Because guess what? There are always unintended consequences. There are always unintended consequences. Some of them are good and some of them are really bad. And we are letting that bad stuff flow out into the world again and again and again because we're not using these feedback loops. What about bringing in change? I love this. I love that there's a time to actually stop and think and ask ourselves the question, did something more important happen out there in the world that needs to come into this next sprint? So this is the idea of the backlog, catching that stuff all the time, catching it as it happens. And then us being able to say, okay, let's narrow our focus. If we're only planning 4 weeks, then let's figure out what we actually can do. Let's bring in that change without freaking out. Apparently, more on-target customer impact really wanted to jump to the front here because the slide came up really early. So this is the thing about a more on-target customer impact. Your customers want to jump to the front. They want to be included. So if we plan for a very short period of time, have a small set of things to create, and we create it, then what we have is an actual piece of value that customers can interact with. Okay. None of that is news to any of you, I bet. So if I were to distill it to the 5 top tips I have for using agility to metabolize change well, here they are. Now, the one I want to talk a little bit about is being courageous when inspecting and adapting, to hide nothing. Since Agile crossed the chasm and came into pretty much every business on the planet, one of the things that was not able to happen as easily is for us to stop hiding from each other. Us to stop hiding what's really going on. Us to stop hiding how the product is doing or how the team is doing because there's just so much weight on top of us. And I know it's hard, but this is one of those central things. It's actually a core value of Scrum, courage. Oh, I'm with French speakers. This word, courage, it means something to you, doesn't it? Yeah. Ooh. So allow yourself to bring a little bit of that into your system now. If it works for you, you can touch your heart like this and just contact your actual courage. Okay. So I know what you're thinking. You're sitting there going, yeah, Lisa, but what about all of these impediments? What about all the things that are holding us back? What about all the reasons why we can't do these simple things, these simple frameworks, and these simple top tips? Why can't we do these? It's all things that are keeping us from doing this. I get it. I hear it all day long from you. I hear it all day long. And what I have to tell you about it is something that Ken Schwaber said ages ago. He said if you implement Scrum day after day, month after month, all the time, these reasons why the organization is in its own way are going to get thrown up in your face. You're going to see them over and over again. And here's the simple way I have to say this. The only thing agility is guaranteed to deliver 100% of the time is impediments. So if impediments are in your reality, then guess what? It's all working beautifully. So just take that in for a minute. It's all working beautifully. Now, I get that we don't like it. I get that it's uncomfortable. I get that it feels like sometimes you're hitting your head against a brick wall and nothing's going to change. Hang in there. Because impediments are not in the path, they are the path. Every time an impediment comes up, a reason why you can't deliver value, a reason why your team can't deliver value, a reason why the organization is in its own way, it's a really good partner for you. And if you feel powerless, it's a really good partner for you to work with other people who are also experiencing this impediment and raise that collective power together. Impediments are the path. Working with leaders now, they're like, oh, Lisa, what's our business agility strategy? And I'm like, I don't know, what's your problems? Like, let's just list out the reasons why your organization is in the last century, and let's go one by one. Highest business value impediment, let's knock it down. Go down to the next one. Let's get that one cleared. So we've known these things for a long time, y'all. Theory of constraints, find the bottleneck, all value stream mapping, other ways we know how to help. All right, so get an impediment in mind. It could be a tiny one, something that's just bothering you a little bit. It could be a really big one that you've been trying so hard to overcome for a long time. So go ahead and do that, because we're going to come back to it in a little while. So just to encourage your peers sitting around you, how many of you already have an impediment in your mind? You don't have to talk about it, but how many of you have it? Yeah, there you go. Everyone look around. People are getting impediments in their minds. Good. All right. Here's my premise. I believe that we have an emerging superpower, and it is simply this: the power to metabolize change for good. That whatever change comes, we can get the nutrition out of it, we can get the goodness out of it, because the one thing we cannot stop is change. So let's now be more specific, let's narrow in, and let me share with you some ways that I think we know how to change and help others change. So this is called the edge theory of change. And very, very simply, it's just that there is a current way that you live or think, and then there's this thing on the other side of the edge, this thing that's trying to emerge. So to make it like super relatable, let's just talk about daily life, right? So going from being a couple, your current reality, to being parents. How many of you have done that? Don't you know there is nothing that's going to prepare you for that moment you bring that kid home? It doesn't matter how many classes you've taken. It doesn't matter how many books you've read. Living it is a completely different thing. And you've already crossed that edge. Having horrible stage fright to playing guitar in bars. That's another edge people cross. People cross edges like that all the time. Who's crossed the edge to go take a dance class? And you're like, oh, I can't do that. And then you did it and you actually liked it. Here's another one, enjoying unrestricted mobility, and then in the pandemic, being in lockdown. We have crossed a lot of change edges. So start to think about the change edges you've already crossed. Undoubtedly, there have been a lot of them. All right, so life puts us at change edges. Good news, that means you know how to do it. You have this superpower already. Agile puts us at change edges because Agile's countercultural to the machine model of working. Okay, so here are some common change edges that Agile puts people at. Being told what to do, to volunteering for tasks. A simple thing that freaks a lot of people out, right? That's a change edge people cross when they learn to work in an Agile way. Deciding for the team to letting the team decide. This is a change edge that many people in management or formerly managers learn and cross. Avoiding failure at all costs. How about that one? To what we do with Agile, embracing a fail fast mentality and say that failure is learning. So I'm not saying that everyone who uses Agile or who is in the Agile community is great at all of these things. I'm just saying these are change edges many of us have already crossed. And it's our job to help other people cross them because they are terrifying to most people. Now, when we talk about the organization level, that's like all of these terrified people amplified into a collective, and now we've got these change edges. Inflexible plans that require a certain thing at a certain time, to the idea that we can welcome plans because we're delivering all the time. That's a change edge for organizations. You know this one. Isn't it convenient to specify the product at the beginning, throw it over the wall, and then just hang out and wait for it to come? It's convenient, but it doesn't work in a world of constant change. So the change edge people cross here is guiding the product all along and getting value all along. Now, you're probably thinking of someone you're like, yeah, they haven't crossed that change edge. Don't worry. Your job is to continue to help them because the world, the way it is, does not support them throwing it over the wall and waiting for a delivery. They're going to constantly be in pain if they're not on this other side of the change edge, if they're not guiding the product all the way along. What about this one? Ooh, budgets. Bottom-up annual funding for teams that we presume are going to be together all year long, to a continuous budgeting cycle based on, oh, wait for this, the actual capacity of the organization. So see how Agile helps us get radically courageous about what is actually possible, and then asks us to deliver the highest value things within what is actually possible. Okay, so these are just some common change edges that I work with all the time with organizations. This is just sort of where they are. Of course, now we're coming to you. Because as Agilists, we are sitting on some very common change edges. So see if any of these are in play for you. Or you can start thinking, like, what change edge am I actually sitting on? So here's this. I know, as human beings, I get it. We want to alleviate discomfort as fast as possible. I know that that is my go-to. But you know, and I know, because you've probably done it, that we can sit in discomfort and see it as a positive indicator that we are growing, that we don't have to push it away so fast, that we can actually find the gem, the lesson, the growth in the discomfort. What about waiting for change to happen from above to leading from where you sit, wherever you sit? What about this one? Doing what you're told, to asking questions and voicing opinions so that everyone can self-organize and figure out the better way. These are just some common change edges that the people I'm working with in the Agile community are working on right now. Maybe some resonate for you. Or maybe a different change edge is coming to your mind now. Don't worry, you know how to cross edges. You've been doing it. All right, so remember that impediment that you thought about a moment ago? Here's my premise. We're not crossing change edges well enough or frequently enough, and we're not relieving impediments well enough or frequently enough because of conversations we are not having. Uh-oh. You know where this is going. Remember that impediment you thought about a few minutes ago? Who do you need to talk to? What's the conversation you need to have that maybe you've had before and it didn't go so well? Or maybe you've never had this conversation because you're afraid to. That would be reasonable. These are dicey conversations. These are countercultural conversations. Maybe you're just now realizing, I could easily have a conversation with this person about this impediment. Whatever the situation, I want to get you ready to have that conversation. So keep that impediment in mind and keep maybe that person in mind if you've already got them identified. And let's go through a couple steps together. 2 major parts to having a courageous conversation: inner work and outer work. I bet you can guess which one takes the more time. It's the inner work. So let me give you a specific set of questions you can ask yourself to do this inner work. Now, if you had the conversation in the past, or you can just imagine some other courageous conversation you had in the past and it didn't go well, I will bet you didn't do or finish your inner work before having the conversation. So think of it right now in this situation you have in your mind. What is your actual intention for having this conversation? If it is to force the other person to see how you are right and they are wrong, you're not ready for the conversation yet. Your intention has to come from a place where you can be side by side with this person, even if they're your adversary, even if it has not gone well with them in the past. So think harder. What's your real intention for this conversation? What do you really want? So to help you figure out what you want, start to think about what is the positive difference if this goes well? How better could it get? Let yourself have it, at least in your imagination. How much better could it get? How amazing could it be if this impediment gets alleviated, if this conversation goes well? At least let yourself have it in your mind for a little while. If you can't articulate to someone the vision you have of what will happen when this impediment is alleviated, it's just because you haven't imagined it enough. So imagine it and get ready to tell someone else, because guess what? That other person doesn't see it. We don't see the world the same way. 2 people do not see the world the same way. And then at the end of all this, as you have thought about your intention, how much better it could get, all of that, there's probably going to be this voice inside of your head that says, yeah, but I need to ask for something that I'm not sure they're going to give me. You have to ask for it. Or, yeah, I've got that piece of feedback that's going to be really hard to deliver, but if I don't, nothing's ever going to get better. That's the thing for you to assert. So this inner work, it can take a day. It can take a month. However long it takes until you feel ready enough to have this conversation. And here's the thing, just before you feel completely ready, then go have a conversation. If you wait until you feel completely 100% ready, you'll probably never do it. So this is why your friends can help. Literally, get with a friend, practice key moments of what you want to say, because here's the truth. The very first time the words come out of your mouth and you're practicing what you want to say to this person, it's not going to be good. It's not. It's going to be a bunch of word salad. It's going to be a bunch of really long-winded sentences. And your friend is going to say to you, okay, but I've lost your point. And you're going to try it again. And your friend will say, okay, closer, but now I still don't know exactly what you're asking for. And you're going to try it again. Oh, I think I've heard about this iterations thing somewhere before. It works for us too. So just prior to having this conversation, just prior, load into your mind and your body your intention for having it, your vision of how much better it could be if this impediment gets alleviated, and then stick close to that, because all the practice you've done, you know this conversation isn't actually going to go that way. But if you stay close to your intention and you stay close to your vision, it can go better even when it goes a little bit off the rails. All right. So what I would like for you to do now, if it serves you, is to turn to someone near you and just tell them anything you're thinking about from this last few minutes that we've been working on getting ready for a conversation. If it doesn't serve you, that's fine. Just stay with yourself. Stay in solo thought. You might take some notes. We're just going to talk with each other for about 2 minutes. That's all. Go ahead. Thank you. I hope that was helpful to you. You need each other. The work we're in right now is really not about a new process. The work we're in right now is bringing in a wholesale change, not just to the way we work, but to the way we think about working. Everything is changing. So, there's all these arguments. I think in the Agile community, we get into a lot of arguments just to distract ourselves, honestly. And one of them is like doing Agile versus being Agile. Throw that aside. There's a bigger game. There's a much bigger game, and we're all in it whether or not we know it. So what if agility is a brilliant, emergent response? A response to the times we're actually in. What if it's here to help us? What if it's here to be a powerful helper for metabolizing constant change? So at the beginning of this, I said, if you're willing to come with me, we'd be going into outer space together. And that's what's going to happen next. So if you're willing, you can downcast your eyes to the floor or maybe even close them as I help you take a journey inside of your own imagination. This is just for you. You're not going to have to talk to anyone about this. This is just an imagination journey. And if you don't want to do that, that's okay. Just stay present. Okay, so if you're going on the imagination journey with me, downcast your eyes or close them, and imagine in the middle of your forehead a little dot of light. Check it out. What color is this light? And now you notice that there's this light is actually a beam of light going up, up, up. Allow it to take you up, 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 out of this room, out of this building, up, 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 further, further, further. Now you're seeing the coastline of the area. Now you're seeing a larger bit of the coastline. Now you're going further up and you're seeing whole continents. And now you're going further, further, further into outer space. And finally you're there in the quiet, in the vastness, and the everything is all rightness. Just allow yourself to enjoy this perspective for just a moment. Give it to yourself, the enjoyment of this. And now you may notice that there is this little ball of blue-green with little white clouds wisping around it, rising into your view now. And you know that it's the planet, the one we all live on. Just allow yourself to enjoy the beauty. Allow yourself to feel a bit of awe even. Just give that to yourself. Now you notice that that beam of light goes back down to the planet. So now you're going to follow that beam of light from outer space, from the stillness, the vastness, the everything is all rightness of outer space. Follow it all the way down. Now you're seeing the coastline. Now you're seeing the city. And now you're coming back into this room. And as you land in this room, put your hands on your body somewhere to remind yourself that you are here. Take a breath and gently open your eyes. You might wiggle your fingers or your toes. And in a moment, you will put your gaze back up here. We are on this one planet together. That's obvious. There is something so precious and terrifying about the time that we're in, this species moment on our planet. That's what people are calling it, a species moment, like the human species, like all of us together. We're in this moment, and it's not clear we're still going to be here for very much longer. So as I take us into this terrain, into the big, I mean way bigger than business, big context we're all in, let me start by sharing a few lines of a poem that have meant a lot to me. The poem is called Hieroglyphic Stairway by Drew Dillinger. It's 3:43 a.m. and I'm awake because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. My great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, what did you do while the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unraveling? Surely you did something when the seasons started failing? As all the birds, mammals, reptiles were dying? Did you fill the streets with protest when democracy was stolen? Tell me, what did you do once you knew? What did you do once you knew. Sadly, I have to tell you, even though that poem was not written very long ago, we don't have to wait for our great-great-grandchildren's generation to experience what's in that poem. It's already here now. Climate catastrophes, the rise of extremism and polarization, horrible inequities, biodiversity loss and extinctions at a rate that is just unbelievable, and systems of business that run on growth at all costs. This is our everyday normal environment now. What did you do once you knew? It's a phrase that has been ringing in my ears for, I don't know, I heard that poem about 13 years ago. What did you do once you knew? Now here I am, I've made the case for us Agilists being good at metabolizing change, having this superpower that's emerging. And I myself find myself unequal to the task when I ask the question, what did you do once you knew? So here's my piece of it. My piece of it is giving this talk, and only this talk all year long, to raise awareness about our superpower and our planetary challenge. And along the way, I've got to get myself ready for what the hell is next. What's next? How do we talk about a world that is closer to the principles of nature? So I've been learning from these two women, Michelle Holliday and Laura Storm, this year. And one of the things I've learned in my studies with them this year is this idea that a lot of the horrific situations we're currently in are because of some separations that happened just around the rise of the Industrial Revolution. In fact, made it possible for the Industrial Revolution to rise. So humans over nature, masculine over feminine, outer striving over inner knowing, and left brain over right. So we just started to privilege all of those things. And we created these splits. And we pulled ourselves away from the wholeness of life. And we put ourselves in organizations that believe they can run like machines. Well, you know what's going to happen. Those organizations cannot continue running like machines forever because of all of these huge planetary challenges that are going to keep knocking at our door. We are going to continue to field systemic shocks, planetary systemic shocks. So the idea is, whatever we do, if we can start to heal these separations, then we will come closer to thrivability. We will come closer to the logic of life. So you can start thinking about this now, like how in my day-to-day can I start to heal these separations? And I would maintain that as an Agile community, we're already doing it. So this is one of many different kinds of lists of masculine and feminine qualities, or I like to think of them as essence energies, right? So in the Agile world, this is just one example, we are super goal-oriented, aren't we? We are like super, super goal-oriented, but the way we accomplish those goals is through collaboration, interdependence, and a bias for flow. So we're already healing that masculine over feminine separation in our community. I just want to encourage us to keep doing it, to keep letting agility live and maybe even thrive because it's a better match for where we actually are. We're going to have time for a few questions. So if you want to ask a question, be thinking about that now. I'm going to speak to you for just a few more moments, and then we'll see if there are any questions out there. It's also fine for us to sit in the silence of this, because I realize that I've taken us to some very big territory. Because I keep thinking, what would it take to have a massive potential impact for some of these planetary challenges we have? Oh, it would take a worldwide community. That sounds like the Agile community. I don't know if you know it, but you're part of a gigantic worldwide community. I started this year in Japan giving this keynote. I end in 2 weeks in Peru giving this keynote, and I'm here today with you. There are Agilists on every major landmass that's habitable, at least, on the planet. You're part of a gigantic community, and that community would have to love experimenting and learning and sharing with each other. That's what would make a big difference. Guess what? We've got that too. So I think we have all the ingredients we need to make a significant difference. And I want you to know that Agilists are already doing it. This is a new magazine that just came out 2 days ago, and it is filled with stories of Agilists who are making a difference toward our planetary challenges using Agile frameworks, Agile values, Agile mindsets, and just the idea of metabolizing change in general. It's called We Hope. We hope. We have this active hope that we can make things better. And because we know that we can only do it together. People say, okay, so Lisa, what's your solution for all these things? And I'm like, I have no idea, but I know if we pull people together, we will figure it out together. So this is one thing I want to offer you as a place to go. And here's another one. There is now a global community of people who are telling their stories of how they're using Agile for these large, intractable meta-crises. And there's a meetup that meets monthly. And just 2 weeks ago, I experienced something called The Week. The guy, Frederick Laloux, you might remember him from Reinventing Organizations, and he sort of popularized the teal movement within the Agile space. So he and his wife, Helen, also had their own, oh my God moment. And that turned into this program called The Week. It's meeting in 1 week for 3 different times, and each time you watch a 60-minute video together and then share your reactions to it with each other. And it absolutely makes no bones about it. It takes us right into the depth of the situation we're in, this species moment. And then we wallow around in the bottom for the next one, which is like, how did we get here and why are we so stuck? And then, of course, because everything is a hero's journey and we're the heroes, we come out the other side of this program, The Week, with amazing stories of what people are already doing, people just like you. So I'm hosting this for free. I think there are about 14 seats left. You can use that QR code to join us. I have a desire for 10,000 Agilists to experience The Week next year. So maybe if you come to this in December and you get fired up about it like I have, maybe you can be one of the people to host it next year. So we're coming back to this beautiful planet we're all on. We're coming back to our species moment and back to the idea that, maybe, just maybe, we as Agilists know how to do some things or know how to be in a certain way that can be helpful to these people already working on these big planetary issues. So I have one really genuine question to ask you, for you to just bring it into your body and your mind in the next couple days, to just think about it, just let it roll around. And the question is simply this: what are you applying Agile to that is worthy of you? You. with these emerging superpowers, you with this flexible mindset, you, precious person who can make a difference. So we do have about 7 minutes or so more that we could spend together. So if there's a question or something you want to say, you can feel free to come to any of the microphones in the corners here. Yeah, come on up. Hi.
Hi, thank you.
Courageous first person.
Hi, thank you. It was really inspiring. So I was wondering about the 4 areas of the challenge, and I will just maybe go deeper into the left brain over the right brain. So that's something I wanted to maybe to explain to us. What did you mean by that?
Great. What's your name?
Sylvia.
Sylvia, thanks for being the first to ask a question. Yeah. So the idea of the left brain over the right brain, well, I mean, just check it out. I mean, in your own business experience, we basically make decisions based on numbers. Now, you and I know all those numbers are sort of made up, right? Because we help make them up, right? But we still do. We privilege the scientific method over everything. We privilege dicing up the world into all these little specialties, and each specialty has its narrow lane. I've just spent a week in the hospital with my mother, because when my mother goes in the hospital, I stay with her. I don't know, do other people do this? I stay all night with her. So we were there all last week. Let me tell you how far this has gone, this left brain over right brain, is that the doctors, the specialists, do things that harm the patient. And they try to coordinate, but they literally don't get each other's worlds. So the right brain is a much more integrative brain. It also integrates information from non-traditional sources, like the source of your own inner wisdom, the actual uniqueness of your own voice, the thing you need to say that no one else can say. It brings in the artistic side, the creative side, the novel, innovative side of our brains. So this is another place, actually, where I would say that the Agile community is ahead of a lot of the rest of the world. Because if you think about the things that we've brought in to our intentionally incomplete frameworks, there are things that help us encounter that right brain creativity. But Sylvia, did that help? Okay, great. Hi.
Hi. You told that organizations have to adapt to an ever-changing world, but they have to change themselves all the time too, because building a career by working 30 years in the same company is not the norm anymore. Yeah. So how are teams that are always changing can manage that change while they're not stable by themselves?
Well, so I don't know. Our experience, I'm sure, differs vastly. But in my experience, the reasons why organizations are not managing the change themselves is they're just not disciplined. I mean, and we think about agility, and people are like, oh my God, agility is so fly by night. It's not serious. And I'm like, have you ever really tried it? Because agility, like the cadence of these repeated events that happen in an agility framework ask us to be incredibly disciplined. Disciplined about prioritization of what's really needed. Discipline about how we're going to maintain our focus while things are changing outside. Discipline to inspect the product and be real about it. Discipline to say what are the impediments and why are we not getting over them. So I think, at least in my experience, that the organizations that keep just getting rocked by change have not realized that they can metabolize change and still stay stable, while everything out here is changing. Everything is changing. And the organizations that don't change, don't worry, they're not going to make it. They're just not going to make it. That's a little scary. And kind of true. Like the Fortune 100 list has changed out more in the last 10 years than it has in any time period since they've been measuring the Fortune 100 list. It's the time of destruction and rebirth, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Come on.
Hi, Lita. My name is Anis, and I'm trying to close my eyes to figure out what you try to leave, or to try to let us leave. The only thing that I have in my mind now is these children and women dead in Gaza. So how the agility can help change to stop this genocide and this injustice? Thanks.
I don't know. My heart feels for you and for all the people losing their lives, their homes, their sense of safety, if they even had it to begin with. I do not have an answer for that, but I know people like you, and maybe some others of you out here, who also have your hearts ripped to shreds right now. That's the place to start. Come together and talk about what might be able to be done. Joanne Stone, who runs those Agility Impact meetups, she has also started, this is maybe something you can think about, she has also started an incubation program for people, hopefully in the same geography, who want to get together and make a difference on some of these horrible planetary challenges we're facing, like this war. So, if you are so interested, are you interested in finding friends who could join you in this? Are you? Will you stand up? Okay. You're going to look for this man today. What's your full name? Sorry, I can't hear you. Come on over. Tell everyone what your full name is so they can find you.
Yeah, it's Anis.
Anis. So look over there. If you think to yourself, gosh, we've got to do something, then find this man today and talk to him. Because I don't have an answer for this, but you together, you do.
Thank you, Alice.
Yeah. Okay, last one. Come on in.
Thank you again for your speech. One thing I'm thinking about is that one of the organizations that really works like a machine is the government. And it works like that because it's based on the public opinion.
Yeah.
So to change the way the government works, the general public must also change the way it thinks.
Yeah.
And now you're preaching to agile people.
Right.
But how do you make the general public aware of all you're speaking about?
I think you know this is boomeranging back to you already, don't you? Because I actually don't know. My whole job is to encounter you and Anis and the other people in this room who are thinking, my God, maybe we can do something about that. You know, what if we looked at the work that Luke Holman has done, for example, to bring participatory budgeting, that's hard to say, participatory budgeting into municipalities? What if we connect the government people and the people who are citizens and have them make decisions together? That's already been happening in the Agile world. So if you have a passion for that and someone else in here does, get together and figure out what you can do. Read that magazine, We Hope, and see what people have already done. So here's the thing. If you are looking for a solution, stop. The era of solutions is over. The era of working with constant change is here. So guess what your new strategy is? Is to figure out the next wise step and do it. and then see how that changes the complex system that you're in. Inspect and adapt. Figure out the next wise step and do it. If you think you're going to figure it out and then go implement this thing, the world is going to steamroll you with one change after another. Right? But the next wise step, you know how to do that. You do too. Okay, everyone, that's the end of our time together. I hope it's been helpful.